Civic Hub is a shared community space for grassroots and small nonprofit organizations working to make lives better for everyone in Waterloo Region. Partner organizations come from a range of fields: environmental justice, democratic reform, arts and culture, anti-poverty, anti-racism, human rights, ethno-cultural and newcomer support, technology, peace and nonviolence, spirituality, and well-being. On the show, we welcome one of our partners to the Civic Hub. Today on Welcome to the Civic Hub, we have Breanna to talk to us about Renoviction. Breanna, welcome to the Civic Hub.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Just so we're all on the same page, can you explain what Renoviction is?
Yeah, of course. So the basic way of explaining what a renoviction is a landlord comes to a tenant and says, hey, I've got a bunch of renovations that need to be done. And it's basically going to be too much for you to live here, so you're going to have to leave, which is fine and legal when there are actual renovations that need to be done. But in my case, with the buildings that I'm living in, just none of the information really adds up to what we would call a good faith eviction, right? They basically come up with an excuse for extensive renovations for an apartment or rental unit in order to have the tenants move out. And what a lot of people don't realize is that you as a tenant have what's called a right to first refusal, which means that yes, they can do renovations, yes, you can leave, but you actually as a tenant have the right to be the first person to come back to your rental unit with the same rate. So it doesn't matter if they make your kitchen look like $1 million. It's whatever you paid beforehand is what you're supposed to be paying at when you come back. But with renovictions, what they typically do is they know that there's no such thing as a short-term lease for a new building, right? So if I were to go right now and try to find a short-term lease to be somewhere while the renovations are being complete, I would still have to sign a year lease. And you can't break that because then there's other legal ramifications that go along with that, right? So they basically bank on you leaving, not knowing that you're allowed to come back, not knowing that they're not allowed to up the rent, and they're hoping that you won't do anything about it. And you just be like, okay, well, I guess I'll go find someplace else.
And the renovations that are being made, are they legitimate renovations? Are these things like leaking ceilings and holes in the floors that need to be fixed?
No, it's not even that. So for our buildings, they put up a building permit, and it states that they need to remove the load-bearing walls from the kitchen and living room for all 16 units for my building and the adjacent building next to us. They're all from the same landlord. The problem that we have and what we're going to be bringing to the landlord tenant board is that the permit does not match what is on our eviction notice. Our eviction notice does not state that they are load bearing. In fact, it states that they're not structural walls. So to us as tenants, that's confusing. It either is load bearing or it isn't load bearing. Which one is it?
Yeah, if they're removing the load-bearing walls, that's to hold up the building.
Exactly, and that's why they're saying that it's not safe for anybody to be there. But what we would understand is if it's completely unsafe for everybody to be there, right, why isn't it everybody in both buildings that have gotten the eviction notice?
So this isn't applying to everybody in the building?
No, it's not. Even though the permit says for all 16 units for both buildings, it is not. Basically what happened is September 28th, we got the eviction notice and everybody started scrambling. And those of us that had communications with each other, we were like, hey, did you get an eviction notice? Like, what's going on? And some of us did and some of us didn't. And we very, very quickly banded together, created a WhatsApp group so that we could chat and figure out what's going on. And like immediately we figured out that it was anybody from both buildings that had been there for more than a decade. Right.
People who are currently paying a lower rent
Yes,
than market rate.
exactly, because our building was built in 1940, so we still have rent control. They can only up it 2.5% every year.
But if you leave and new tenants were to come in your place, then the sky's the limit for rent.
Exactly.
So really, this renoviction, these notices to get you out, is a sneaky way for the landlord to increase the rent beyond what rent control would allow.
Exactly, because they know that they can't just do it because they want to, because we are protected. Unfortunately, many people don't know what their tenant rights are. I honestly, I didn't know all of them. I knew some of them, but I had to do my own research. And then I quickly shared that with everybody, and I was like, don't sign anything, don't move, don't do anything. This is wrong. There's something going on. We need more information.
Yeah. So you put together, you said a WhatsApp group, and how did you realize that this needed to be done?
Well, I've heard of renovictions before. Unfortunately,
Seems to be kind of
it's unfortunately
sweeping the whole neighborhood.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, like, our landlord's doing this to at least 20 buildings in all of Ontario.
Wow.
So it's clearly not just us. It's clearly in bad faith, which is what we have to prove in order to get the landlord-tenant board to take it off the docket, basically.
Right. This group you've set up, is that just for the people in your building?
Correct, yes. Okay. It first started with just the tenants that got the eviction notices, but then we quickly wanted to create a community for the new tenants that were coming in. Because even though this permit, which was issued August 28th of this year, and then we got our eviction notices exactly a month later, they actually still were bringing in new tenants. So there's 3 or 4 new people in my building, and then there's 3 or 4 new people since September. So since this permit has come up, they've had new people come in. And so we wanted to talk to them and say, hey, do you still have your wall that they said that they're taking down? And they go, yeah. All they did was paint and maybe, make the floors look pretty. That's all they did. That's
Right.
what their fixing up of the apartments was.
So that's the discrepancy between what they say they're doing and what's actually being done.
Exactly.
Yeah. And these people that have had their units renovated, they're paying a much higher rent than the remaining tenants.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. Do you see that this would be a useful thing to bring to the other units, the other buildings that this particular landlord is doing this to?
Yes, absolutely. It's one of the reasons why we got involved with Acorn and with Megan Walker.
Okay.
She has been helping us delegate and organize and kind of, figure out what we can legally do.
Yeah. Megan Walker is the eviction prevention person at the Social Development Center who's doing tenant protection and tenant advocacy.
Yes.
Yeah. And then Acorn, can you tell me about Acorn?
So Acorn is a non-for-profit organization that helps tenants. They have been following our landlord for a couple of years now. So when they found out about our building and about 250 Frederick, they were like, "Oh, let's help you," because we've already been dealing with stuff. They were in London, I believe, just before. Just after we got our eviction notice, dealing with more renovictions in London. I believe that they were helping in Toronto as well. And they're also the organization that helped the demolition bylaw here in Kitchener that just got passed.
Okay.
Which is basically, it's very similar to the renoviction. Basically, the landlords come in and say, "Hi, we have to demo your place, so you can't live here anymore."
Right.
People were doing that in bad faith. There was no reason for them to have a demo. They just wanted it gone so that they could put more high rises up, so that they could increase the rent by 250%.
You've seen that happening. A lot of affordable housing has been demolished to make way for condo towers that are no longer affordable.
That's right. That's why there's no affordable housing.
Yeah. Do you know if in that particular case, in the demolition, does that same rule apply, that tenants still have the first right of...
I believe so. I'm pretty sure they're supposed to still... So that there's a couple of things. So you're supposed to have the right the right to basically come back, right? And if you can't go back to the original building, the landlord is supposed to set you up with something similar. Right? Something similar that you already had, and something that's around the same price range, if not the same price range. Right? What we're finding, though, is the bad faith landlords don't even mention that. They don't even tell you, hey, I can set you up, I can put you here, you know?
Because that's a cost to them.
Exactly. Of course it's a cost to them. And why would they want to pay to make sure that we're not homeless?
Yeah. So this is happening across town, across the province, probably across the entire country.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you find that your own group, your own WhatsApp group for your building is enough to make a difference?
I mean, I would like to hope so, but 30 people in 2 little buildings isn't going to be enough.
Yeah.
We're trying to get in front of city council. We're trying to get on the city council docket and talk to them about it and do as much as we can in the community to basically have our voices heard, to make that 30 people bigger, because the bigger the group, the more voices we have. And if the more voices we have, then maybe somebody will listen.
Right. So the immediate goal is to prevent this renoviction from taking place.
Correct.
Do you have longer term goals for that as well?
Yes, we would like to be able to we would like to vote in a renoviction bylaw for Kitchener.
Yeah, I hear that's on the books.
Yeah. We've been talking to some city councilors. Some of them have said that they are not sure if that's something that they can help us with.
Oh.
Which is a little confusing.
Okay.
And then there's other ones that have said, I'll look into this, and then they don't do anything further.
Right.
They don't give us any resources or anything to help us move forward with that. So then it's kind of like we're stuck on our own with the resources that we have.
Yeah. How have people accepted your own group and the larger groups like Acorn? Have people just climbed on board immediately, or do you have to do some convincing?
You kind of have to do convincing, because people don't even believe that renoviction is a thing. They're like,
Really?
That sounds illegal.
Even when they've got a notice right in front of them saying leave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, there have been some tenants that have left. They're scared.
Yeah.
They don't know what their rights are, so they think they have to leave. Some people were able to take the money that the landlord gave them and use that to get a house, which, I mean, wonderful. If they're able to do that and that makes them happy and that works for them, great. Unfortunately, for everybody else in the buildings that can't afford even just higher rent costs, let alone a house, we're stuck fighting.
Yeah. How do you convince people that are reluctant to participate?
Well, as a single mom, I have a lot of pull. I just explain wholeheartedly, listen, if we don't do anything about this, I don't know about you guys, but I can't afford something that's in actual market value.
Yeah.
I pay 55% under market value. And I'm on maternity leave, which is not my entire normal income, right? So I've had to have a roommate, which was my brother, which is lovely and amazing. Not everybody has that ability either, right? Sometimes it's strangers. Sometimes they just don't have anybody else. So I'm very, very lucky that I have my brother to be able to do that and to be able to help and support my income, right?
So the next steps then are to approach City Council.
Absolutely, yes.
Hopefully get this renoviction bylaw enacted.
Yes.
What do you hope to that this bylaw will do for you?
That it stops bad faith renovations.
And that landlords will actually follow through and provide alternative housing during that process?
Absolutely. And that there's more I can't think of the word. So basically, there is some consequences for the landlord, but for a multi-billionaire landlord like the one we have, the consequences. Oh, you messed up. Okay, you have to pay the LTB $700 per unit.
And that's
nothing.
a minimal cost that doesn't teach a
Of
lesson.
literally nothing. So they don't care. They're like, oh, okay, that's
Yeah.
pennies to me.
Yeah. So when all this comes to pass, what will you do?
Well, I am thankful and grateful that I have the opportunity to be able to move home. But that's literally just me. From everybody that I've been talking to, nobody else has that ability.
So most people are going to have to.
They're going to end up being homeless. They're going to be in those tent cities.
Some people will not have
And
no
that's-
recourse for.
Yeah, and that's what
market
everybody
rent.
is worried about. That's why I'm trying to be a voice, because I know that I'm not everybody, right? I know that my neighbors need help, and that we needed to be able to organize this so that we can make sure that they have somewhere that they can be, especially when they're trying to evict us in January,
I know.
right? Like, that's cold. What are we supposed to do?
Yeah.
And if I didn't have a lovely family that was able to take us in, what was I going to do in the middle of winter with he'll be 6 months old by then?
Yeah.
How is that okay? How is that legal?
Well, it obviously isn't legal,
No.
but there needs to be some teeth into this law, into a new law that prevents it from happening in the first place.
Yeah, and we need to make sure that landlords understand that they just can't throw people out just because they want to make more money.
Yeah.
I understand that that's how the world works, but at some point, someone needs to have compassion. That's why we need affordable housing to come back.
Yeah.
Tent cities would not be a thing if we had affordable housing and if people would stop building skyscraper condos.
Yeah. I can't see individual landlords building affordable housing unless there's a law that has inclusionary zoning that
Exactly.
requires there to be 30% affordable housing in any units, any buildings that get built.
Yep.
That doesn't seem to be on the near horizon.
No, it doesn't.
No. How has your community, your building, been affected by this? Are you seeing more of your neighbors? Has it?
Oh my goodness, yes we are. There are some neighbors that I really feel bad about it, but I didn't know that they'd been there for so long. So me personally, I've been there for 12 years, and there's some people I had never seen before, and they've been there longer. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry that this is the reason that we're meeting, but like, thank you for helping me organize and being a voice. And like, there's so much camaraderie. And it really is starting to feel like a proper community.
That's great. You always hear that when push comes to shove, people will be at each other's throats, but it never turns out that way. It's always that people are providing mutual aid and assistance and coming together to help each other out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's been lovely. I mean, not everybody has been available, but that's why we have the group, because then at least they can go in and check messages and kind of figure out where everybody is. Some of us are able to do things more than others, like myself. I'm on maternity leave, so it's easier for me to come here and do this interview and go out and, do the walks and stuff. Unfortunately, for a lot of the organizing, it is during the middle of the day, during the middle of the week, because that's the best time for media. It's the best time to get in front of city council. Right? So there are some tenants that are feeling a little bit left behind because they still have to go to work.
Yeah.
Right? And I can't imagine how difficult that must feel to have to go to work, so that you can afford the house that you might not even have in the next couple of months.
Right.
And then not being able to do anything extra about it because you're locked into your schedule.
Yeah. So these people, without your organizing, without you having set up the community group, they'd be just left on their own to
Possibly.
deal with this.
Yeah.
It's great that you're doing that. What are the mechanics of this organization? How do you meet together? Is there space in the building that you can use to meet? And would the landlord even allow that kind of thing?
I mean, We don't talk to them because they don't answer their texts or their phone calls, so it wouldn't really matter.
Yeah.
We don't really have a place in the buildings, so what we try to do is like go to a Tim Hortons and talk,
Okay.
or we use the Civic Hub,
Aha.
which has been wonderful, and they've been really great at allowing us to use that space to talk to some of the city councilors and the MPP that we've been able to get a hold of. And then sometimes they're just like, hey, like, you know, if you talk to Meg, she might be able to get us in there, and then it's just us. We've also had meetings with 250 Frederick as well,
Okay.
at the Civic Hub to kind of meet each other and figure out, you know, what exactly it is that we're fighting for, and try to make sure that both buildings are on the same page.
Yeah, so that's great. Not only are you building a community within your own building, you're spreading out to build a much larger community.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Have the other buildings that you've met through the Civic Hub, are they doing sort of the same things? Are they?
Yeah, so they're about 8 months ahead of us. So they just started their landlord-tenant board hearings,
Okay.
which is kind of sort of how we know what is going to look like for us. And what we're trying to do is once we get to the hearings, we're trying to come together as one big group.
Right.
Because again, like I said,
Yeah.
one voice, not many people are going to listen. So
Right.
if we could get all of our voices in all at the same time to try to prove, to say, hey, like this isn't right. Clearly something is not right.
Yeah.
Because how is it that my building, the other building beside me, and then the 250 is a giant high rise. It's an older one, but there's
Right,
so
right.
many people in there. I think it's more than the two buildings that I have.
Wow.
Right? So there's
Yeah.
more than 60 units there.
Yeah, it's what, 15, 17 floors, something like that?
Something like
Yeah.
that, yeah. And it's mostly elderly people.
Right.
And, you know,
And mostly people who don't know their tenant rights.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right? It's people like my grandparents. I know my grandparents don't know the tenant rights.
Yeah.
Right? So I couldn't even imagine having to try to explain this to 250 Frederick at the beginning.
Yeah.
Right? And unfortunately, a lot of people left because of it.
Now that you're at the front of this, you said that you're a little bit behind the people at 250, but I'm sure that there are other people receiving renoviction notices as we speak.
More than likely, yeah.
Yeah. What advice would you have to them?
Look up your rights. Look up your tenant rights for Ontario. Literally just a Google search and you'll be able to find them. You'll be able to understand the right of refusal. You'll be able to understand what landlords are allowed to ask of you, what you're allowed to tell them no to, because you are allowed to say no. You're allowed to not move out. Just because they give you an N13 doesn't mean that you have to leave.
N13 is the form.
Is the
for
formal
eviction.
eviction notice, yes.
How would you get other people to organize? What advice do you have for creating a group like you've done?
Just do it. No hesitation. Don't wait. Don't think that somebody else is going to be the leader. Because at first we weren't sure what was going on, and it was just, let's get information. It was all about just getting information and figuring out where we stood, what we could do, right? And you know, leadership doesn't come easy, and it makes a lot of people feel uncomfortable. But if there isn't anybody to lead, then nothing gets done.
Right. And for those people just starting up an organization to bring their own building together, what resources would you point them to?
I would get
Civic Hub?
them, I would get them in contact with Acorn. I'd get them in contact with Meg Walker if they're in this region. If it's outside of this region, then I would just look up any tenant advocacy groups.
And other than that, tell people to hang together and form a community.
Basically, yeah. Use whatever you can. Meet in person if you can. It's easier to talk about stuff face to face.
Yeah, I guess face-to-face is important because I think, especially if it's a building with older residents, they may not necessarily have access to things like WhatsApp
Correct.
groups.
Yes, and we do have a couple. I think there's 2 or 3 in one of the buildings that they don't have a cell phone or anything. They just have a landline.
Even though,
So what we do is whatever goes on in our group, or whatever emails that we get from Acorn or Civic Hub or whatever, we call them specifically on their landlines
Okay.
and say, hey, this is what's going on. We want to make sure you're still in the group and that you know that you're still part of this community.
Okay. Have you done any flyering, printing off flyers and distributing them, or
Yes.
postering?
Yeah, we did some, I think it was like a week or two after we got the eviction notice. Acorn was able to give us tables and flyers.
Good.
We ended up on the news, on CTV,
Good.
to try to expand, to let the community know, because we're going to need everybody that we can to be able to get in front of these city council people and say, hey, we need this bylaw. We need you to protect us.
Yeah. And that's coming up next? The,
Yeah.
the council meeting, is that? when is that
So
taking
I'm
place?
not sure if there is a direct date yet. I know that there were some difficulties with that.
Okay.
But it should be within the next week, and then another one in January.
Okay. January 2025.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, you're still safe from being turfed out,
Correct.
so
Yeah.
good for you.
Yep. So we're just staying put and basically telling them, sorry, that they can't move us.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Yeah. Get people to contact the Civic Hub
Yes.
at the Social Development Center. I have all that information on the show notes at civichubwr.org. Breanna, thank you so much for coming in, talking to me for a while about your own situation and how to organize. How to organize is an important thing.
It is.
Yeah. And welcome to the Civic Hub.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this. Thank you for letting me use my voice.
You're very welcome. You've been listening to Welcome to the Civic Hub, where we welcome community partners to the Civic Hub. The Civic Hub is online at civichubwr.org. You can reach the Civic Hub by email at civichub@waterlooregion.org. Welcome to the Civic Hub is produced at the studio of CKMS-FM, 102.7 Radio Waterloo. The show is sponsored by the Social Development Center of Waterloo Region. The executive producer is Alexander Petrovich. Ritika Sharmali is the producer, host, and doing some technical production today. Additional technical production by Angeli Sanderson, and my name is Bob Jonkman. Civic Hub is supported by the Region of Waterloo Upstream Fund. And the theme music is A Good Bass by Kumiku from the Free Music Archive, used under a Creative Commons CC0 license.